right, match week 12, international break is finally over, man. How are you doing? How was your little break there from the pod and the Prem?
Yes, sir. A very, very good week again, and also a good little break. I missed the perm. I know, I think you had texted me over the break how boring it was, but yeah, I felt you, my friend. Very boring break, but happy nevertheless that the Premier League is back and it delivered.
Yeah, back with a bang for sure. We'll kind of just jump right into it. Starting us off was Chelsea away to Burnley and then a 2-0 victory for them. Neto and Fernandez on the score sheet. I actually predicted this one spot on. I think I win 2-0 and you win 3-0. Interesting game. I mean, I actually watched this one and I didn't think Burnley played horrible, right? Obviously, I think Chelsea kind of overpowered them, but I was expecting, maybe not expecting, but I thought that, Burnley would not be as good or whatever, but I thought that they played decent, but Chelsea in the end is, I just think kind of too much for them, right? Too much firepower. And
Yeah.
they could have gotten a few more goals in the game as well. So I think there was one chance. It was 1-1, and I think Fleming had a little ball
Yeah,
over the top.
he missed that one there. That was a big chance.
Yeah, and then after that, there was nothing for Burnley.
It's crazy not to jump so far ahead into that game, but similar chance to Declan Rice chance. Remember that one?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
similar chance. They both did. But yeah, man, I have to give credit as well. I think Burnley played well. I think they started the game well. Sunderland did. A few weeks back when we lost 2-1, I also said that. I think Burnley went with the same approach. So you have to give credit where credit's due, like you said. I'm not gonna say easy, but it's preferred nowadays, especially you've seen a lot of these teams coming to us with a packed, we'll say a packed 18-yard box. So it's also like you said, credit where credit's due when Burnley tried, and it could be a different game on a different day if Fleming had taken that chance. But I think overall in the end we had the quality just to shine through and yeah, deservingly win for me on the whole 90 minutes. But yeah, I have to give credit to Burnley for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was happy my boy Enzo got on the score sheet, got me some points in fantasy, some much needed points. I mean, I think this week was a tough week for a lot of fantasy players, but yeah, I agree 100.
Dry
Yeah,
week, and like I think averaging around probably in the 30s to
yeah.
50s. There's unless you were crazy and triple captain Muniz. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And it's funny, we'll talk about fantasy a little bit more the later on we get into the pod, but I agree with you. I think definitely a deserved win. Chelsea's put together some good victories, back to back after that Sunderland result. So, I think deservedly they're sitting where they are
yeah,
in front of
a tough one too. The
yeah.
12:30, 7:30 for us, but 12:30 kickoff for them. Just after international
Yep.
break, having players arriving on Wednesdays, Thursday, and possibly on Fridays as well. So, yeah, I think, like we said, we spoke offline a bit, but something that I was looking for, I don't think it was anything fantastic, but a mature performance and getting the job done, especially when we'll go on to touch on some of the other results that happen, especially later on in the weekend. So, yeah,
Yeah.
mature performance and happy with the 2 points, and yeah, we move.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we can move on now to the Bournemouth West Ham game. And, you look at that result and it's 2-2. And I think some people might think it's a shock, but you actually predicted 2-2. So you got that one spot on. West Ham, getting a good point away to Bournemouth, especially the way I think Bournemouth started the season. Took a recent dip in form, but I mean, still a decent team, a well coached.
Do you think do you think West Ham will view it as a good point though, especially taking the context of the game? Did you get to see the game?
I didn't see the game, but I think you're referring. I mean, you're referring to them being 2-0 up and then allowing two goals in the second half. I think that's a good point, man. I think that being 2-0 up and giving up that two-goal lead, and obviously not losing away from home, but I don't know, man. I'm looking at the stats, and the stats kind of are crazy in favor of Bournemouth. I mean, 76% possession, 4.5 on the expected goals, 28 shots in total, 10 on target, where West Ham have 5 shots and 2 on target, and the 2 on target just happened to go in the net. So I don't know. I didn't watch the game, so I can't really, speak to how the momentum and how it played out, but I think it's still a good point for West Ham. I mean, they might be frustrated giving up two goals, but from looking at the stats, it looks like Bournemouth kind of, controlled that game.
I would agree, but then you have to think about the guy that manages West Ham. So Yeah, I mean, obviously, Bournemouth has had a fantastic start. We've talked about Bournemouth a lot on this pod so far this season, but I'm just thinking of the context of having two goals up. And like you said, for Nuno, it's never been for him, even at Forest, right? It was never about the possession and having the possession of the ball, especially in that where the context of what he had the game 2-0. Yeah, I think, deservingly from Bournemouth because they played some really good stuff. I'm just asking the question, I guess, from Nuno's side, because we know that's never been something. I wouldn't say that he doesn't care, but I don't think that's something that would bother him, especially given the fact that he was 2-0 up. So it's been a good, obviously, run from West Ham as well, again, picking up points in their last couple games. So I'm sure it's going to feel like a bit sweet and sour feeling in their mouth. But yeah, nevertheless, I think you'll be happy, but I can understand. It would feel more like dropping points than happy with the points from West Ham. But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you make a very good point. Nuno being the manager there, I don't think that he would mind those numbers or, those stats or whatever. I think that's a great point to kind of look at and maybe something that I wasn't really necessarily thinking about. But given the season that West Ham have had, I think they take it and they move on. You know, whoever they're playing next week, we'll obviously get into it in the predictions. Yeah, good. I think obviously good point for Bournemouth losing,
yeah,
based off how the game went, right? From losing 2-0 to coming back and getting 2 goals and getting a point out of the game. So not a bad game there. Next up we have Brighton Munich at home to Brentford. I know you like the Brighton Munich saying 2-1 result for Brighton, and I think this was another one you predicted spot on. You had some good predictions this week, actually. Quite a few games you hit spot on.
yes, sir. I watched this one and I was happy for it. The only thing I was not happy for is I did not bring Thiago into my fantasy team, but I was happy nevertheless with the prediction because I know you texted me about it over the weekend. But I think a good game. Obviously, the same thing. Brentford was up to a 1-0 at the half and then allowed two goals, especially a late one in the second half. So I think
And
Brighton deserved the result, but
yeah,
yeah, very good game. I enjoyed watching this game.
yeah, and it looks like it was a missed penalty at the end by Thiago too.
Yeah, he missed a penalty there to tie the game up. Yeah, I completely forgot about that as well.
Yeah.
But
It's interesting you mentioned Thiago because I think I remember a couple weeks ago on the pod. I don't know if you had asked me or if I had asked you if we were bringing Thiago in, and he's gotten some goals, man. I think that it's tough to kind of bring in a Brentford striker when you think about it, but he's got a few goals this year, so might be something that honestly I look at, to be honest, going forward. I don't know. We'll see, but I think good 3 points overall for Brighton, right? Danny Welbeck back on the score sheet for this one, so he's getting a couple goals there, and Minto with an assist. I know he's been kind of popular in fantasy as well lately, but good 3 points for Brighton. I think I had this one going Brentford's way, and I think that was just kind of on like a rush from Brentford's result
yeah,
the
from
week
the result of
prior.
the couple weeks. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a Premier League. A lot of things changed. They could have won as well. I think there was not much to separate them, as you can see from the stats and even watching the game on the eye test. There's not much. Brighton is going to have a bit more possession because of their style of play. But in terms of the game and the quality, I think it was a very even game. And Brighton just edged it, like I said, in the end there. So a good win for them, obviously. I think they've also picked up some mixed result this season. So they'll be happy with that. And we speak about Brentford, transitioning from your first team coach, Thomas Frank, to your set piece coach and still kind of excelling is still a good season. So, yeah, I think I'm not going to be happy, obviously, losing. But when you consider the fact that I believe it was an away game and yeah,
yeah, and I mean it's also Brighton as well too. Like Brighton's had some mixed results, but overall, they're sitting in sixth place on 19 points. So they've had a decent start to the season. I mean, I'm sure that they probably could look at some of their results and say they could have done better, but they're not just sort of like a bottom half of the club or table team or whatever you want to call it. But it's not no game in the Premier League is easy. We always mention that, but I think like you said, good result.
A bit more established than Brentford at the moment, so
Yeah, yeah.
they can accept the defeat. I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that moves us over to Craven Cottage, and finally, someone's been able to beat Sunderland. Fulham with a 1-0 victory, handing Sunderland their third loss of the season. And I honestly didn't watch this one either. I think the 10 o'clock game I watched was the next one that we'll talk about. But good victory for Fulham, and I think that it was a needed victory. I think they needed those 3 points.
Yeah, like you said, a needed victory for Fulham, especially to the start of the season. A tight game. The winner came late in the second half. I wasn't able to see much of this game myself, but I was able to catch the extended highlights. I saw the goal, obviously, from Raul, and it was a good goal. From the highlights, a bit I was able to see, and then the stats, it seemed as if Fulham were deserved winners on the day. So I guess you can't argue with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, kind of looking at the table and looking at Fulham, I mean, they're sitting on 14 points in 15th place, and they're just Leeds is obviously in 18th, and we'll talk about Leeds in a little bit, but that's 3 points ahead of Leeds. So if they had lost this game, they could have found themselves down there, level
Easily
on
in the
points with them.
relegation battle.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely, I think they need to start picking up some points and picking them up fast, I'd say. Well, that moves us into what I think probably is the shock result of the weekend. I mean, Anfield, skinny jeans, flare jeans. Sean Dyche did his thing.
Sean Dyche brought the flare jeans back in style, mate. I think that was an absolutely stunning performance from Nottingham Forrest.
Yeah,
And well-deserved victory, actually.
yeah.
So, not much
Mm,
to think about. I watched the game in full, and I can, for the consistency, I know we're going to touch a bit on it, but as I was speaking with a couple of our friends off the pod, for the consistency, I probably would disallow that goal with the player in the offside position, even though I don't think he was necessarily impeding the goalkeeper. But I also don't think that was a handball at all.
yeah.
So,
I agree with you
um,
on both of those kind of talking points, I'd say. This was an interesting game because I think early in the first half, Liverpool had I don't remember if it was two chances, but I definitely remember one chance where, it looked like a tap in. And I think it was McAllister, if I'm not mistaken, and it was
mhm,
kind of saved off the line. And
it was a header, wasn't it?
yeah, so it was something like that. And I remember watching the game, and after that, it just seemed like you expected Liverpool to kind of keep creating those sort of chances and get a goal, but it just it didn't work out that way. Forrest just started pushing, and I think it wasn't too long after that Forrest got the first goal, and obviously they went on and got a second and third. But I mean, it's crazy to kind of look at Liverpool's season and to see Liverpool lose at home 3-0 to a team that's arguably in a relegation battle, just because I know last few years Liverpool have had this amazing home record where it's very tough to beat them at home. And they go and lose 3-0 to a relegation side team, which I think Forest actually beat them at Anfield last year as well, if I'm not mistaken. But
It did.
I don't know, man. It's so hard to kind of put a finger on exactly what's going on at Liverpool. I think that, we could talk about a number of different things that are attributing to kind of their
Arne Slot, la la.
well, this is an Arne Slot team, right?
I mean, it's a full Arne Slot team now, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I think just to touch on a bit of what you're even talking about in the game, he said it after the game, right? He said it himself. What you just said basically summarized that after the first chance that they just stopped creating chances and he felt his team kind of went in a shell. But I think even watching that and him explaining that and from the summary that you just gave, we both have been in that position before. I know for Arsenal and from Chelsea where you just understand that. I remember especially that season with Mourinho coming out so many times in the press telling us, how many the refs are against us. But just how a goal changed the game. And yeah, I think Liverpool's in that moment, at the moment, unfortunately for them, for where the confidence is just a bit low. You just need kind of like that one result or just that goal, especially in the game, to go ahead to kind of let that confidence breathe. And you can see it. You can see it flowing through not just the players, but everyone as well. You watch them, and I feel like, even the manager sometimes I speak with my friends off the pod and you can see Konate, I know he's not having a good time and, links to Madrid and stuff, but I always tell them my friends, I feel like you can see it even, players are going to make mistakes, but I see him taking him off as soon as he makes a mistake. And I feel like you're kind of losing your players at the same time when you do stuff like that. You know what I mean? Because you're kind of losing the trust and also scapegoating a player when you and I both know we've seen worst performing defenders on that team this season. So it's just a lot to deal with at the moment that we'll see. I don't know. I'm not a Liverpool guy, so I can't speak on if I think Arnie will handle it or what. But yeah, I think it's a difficult moment for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned the Konate thing because, we're recording this on Wednesday night. So obviously we've seen what's happened in the Champions League with them. And I think Konate came off as well early on in the second half. And I was just reading in a little bit off of Slot's post-match press conference. And, he was adamant that, it wasn't anything to do with him. It was more so of a tactical change and whatnot. I'm looking at Liverpool's possession stats, right? And this is probably the case for all of them, but most of their defeats, they're controlling the possession heavily, right? And I think that it's almost something that's kind of like, it's weird to say this, and it might not make sense to anyone really, but I feel like in a way it's hurting them that they are controlling the possession because I think that they're controlling possession in areas where the team is so far forward. They're so susceptible to the counterattack, right? Like, I think a lot of people have criticized Arsenal, especially earlier in the season, but throughout this season, I'd say, and criticized with the handbrake and all that. But, you kind of have to pull teams out a little bit, right? We talk about this so often of, teams packing in and it's tough to break down 11 men in a box, but you kind of have to almost force those teams to come out and try and hit them when they're kind of more spread out. And I don't know. I mean, listen, we're obviously fans of whoever we're fans of, and you know, I'm sure you're just as enthusiastic about seeing Liverpool where they are as I am, right? But if you're looking at this from a completely neutral point of view and you're trying to figure out what's wrong with it, um, I think Slot has a lot of work on his hands to do in terms of tactical approaches, players in the right areas. Another thing that I was just shocked on, just looking at their roster, they only have 3 center backs in that club right now. So it's like if you have a defender that's performing poorly, you can't even drop them, because you have no one to replace them with. I think we could talk about their spending in certain areas and whatnot, but I think Slot has definitely, a lot on his hands, and um, I don't know. I don't know that he'll be given time to do it. I mean, I think we both know Liverpool's history and their managerial history and whatnot, but I think that he has to change it around and he has to change it around fast if he wants to stay there.
I mean, completely agree, right? But I think even to touch on the point that you were saying, being so high up or whatever the case might be, I mean, that's why we're two dudes on a podcast, right? At the end of the day, like we're not paid to do that job. So that's kind of his job. And I think it's easy to analyze. Not easy, I wouldn't say, but it's not even our job, I would say, to analyze in terms of that sense of how they're playing. It's just it's supposed to be something more on him, and I feel like he's not finding that. Like we can sit here and talk about, like you said, them being very more exposed in terms of, playing the high line and not having the players to play the high line possibly because, Virgil is just not the same anymore. Watching him recently is he's just not that player that imposes almost like that two defenders that he used to impose anymore. So it's a bit like, easy for them and not easy for them, but easy for teams to attack, especially with the fullbacks being as weak as we talked about in the early weeks of this pod. So I think it's on him to figure all of that out. You know what I mean? We could sit here and talk for days on things that we could change or things that we'd want to see better. 3 center backs, 2 fullbacks, whatever the case might be. But that's for him to figure out. And I think for the first time, what happened is what we all maybe thought would happen last season in terms of, these players are getting old, the legs are going and stuff like that. And I think now, maybe they gave him this season last year, especially begin still being a Klopp team because I mean they didn't spend much, but they still had quality players all over the pitch. So I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. Obviously, I can't pinpoint just one thing, but a mixture of a lot of things that we both discussed. This so like I say, it's not for us to figure out. It's more on him. But at this point, it's looking a little bit like almost worrying times for them over there from the neutral point of view
Yeah,
for them over there at Liverpool. So yeah, we'll
yeah.
see. We'll see how they deal with it. I don't know how they will, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I think, given their recent form, I think that their next game is away to West Ham, if I'm not mistaken. Becomes an interesting game, right? And obviously we'll touch on that in the predictions, but West Ham have had, I don't want to say a resurgence, but they've had some decent results lately, kind of picking it up a little bit. So that becomes an interesting game, especially after their loss midweek. Their heavy loss midweek. So we'll see how they come out and what they do, and we'll see if Arne Slot gets anything right, makes any changes. Next up, Wolves Crystal Palace. And man, it feels like we honestly don't even have to talk about the Wolves part of any game. We can just copy our audio from the last pods and just insert them because their woes just seem to continue and continue.
They are definitely going down, my friend. If you want to put your house on something this season, if you'd like to put any bet this season, it's that Wolves is definitely going down. I can assure you that.
Very safe bet. They it's funny because I don't know if we talked about this on the pod, but I think a few weeks ago there was like an expected, the Opta does the expected points table or whatever, and I think they had Wolves at like 29 points or something. And there was a Wolves fan in the comments, and he was like, I don't know where we're gonna get 29 more points from. And I mean, I think about that every weekend because I think he was spot on. I don't know where they can get like a total of 15 points from.
It's man, social media is too funny at times, man. Because I just have to read some of these fans' comments, and I'm just cracking up. Like it's funny because it's real, but the fact that you said that is just hilarious, honestly. But yeah, I honestly don't know where they'd get another. I mean, the Premier League is the Premier League, so you never say never. But yeah, they're looking, as we said, weeks in, weeks out, just horrible. 2 points from a treat 12 weeks in. So yeah,
Yeah. And on the other side of this game, I mean, Crystal Palace, sitting pretty in fifth place on 20 points. Obviously 9 points off the top and just 2 points off City in third. So 1 point off Villa in front of them. So not. I mean, they're doing well. They're kind of picking up results, and I think that they had a bit of a slow start to the season as well. So they've kind of turned it around. And by the way, this was actually one that you predicted spot on as well, which
sir.
I'm telling you, you had an amazing weekend in
Yes,
terms of
sir.
predictions. But yeah, Crystal Palace is doing well, man.
Yeah, man. Was a good game. Obviously, from their point of view, we knew it would be a bit easier playing Wolves. They've not offered much this season, as we talked about. But I mean, from the Crystal Palace point of view, the only thing I think, I'm not sure about you, but on my side, the only disappointment is obviously on the fantasy. I had Sar. I wasn't able to bring in Daniel Munoz, so I had Sar for a few weeks and was expecting at least a goal or something in this game, and I didn't get that return. But like you said, a solid 2-0 win for Palace, sitting in 20th place, 3 points behind us in Chelsea, and we play Arsenal this weekend. So it's interesting, and they're definitely making it. We always have, last season, who was it? I'm not sure. We had Brighton, I remember fondly a couple seasons back when they were pushing and making it a bit difficult for the top six, and then this season might be Crystal Palace. But from the neutral point of view, and even from the Chelsea point of view, I'm happy to see them. Just as long as they're not above us, but happy to see them in and about the areas because I always think that they're a good team, and especially being established in the Premier League for a while. So
Yeah,
nothing much to say on that game for obviously the Wolves' point of view, but yeah, solid win for them, and hopefully keep going.
yeah, and I think I just thought of one thing we both failed to mention is they lost arguably their best player this season as well. So impressive that they're still kind of putting together
Yeah,
wins and
I
and
mean, but
getting
that's
goals.
that we've touched on Glasner too many times, though, and I think we've talked about that a few weeks back in a couple episodes. 'Cause remember, they also beat Liverpool, so them beating Wolves this weekend won't be our team of the week as we've seen what they can do. So in
Yeah,
terms of that, so that's probably why we really haven't touched on their best player that they've lost.
yeah. Well, moving into the last game of Saturday for us, and obviously, I was grinning from ear to ear watching this game, but Newcastle with an impressive victory. I mean, 2-1 at home. City did not look great. I will say though, the second goal for Newcastle, I'm just shocked at how that was not ruled out. I mean, I think it's 100% offside. I honestly don't see how it's not offside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know what your feelings are on it, but I was just absolutely shocked when I saw this goal given.
Honestly, I'm gonna have to look back on it because I don't know why I'm drawing a blank at the moment of thinking about that goal. But I watched the game and the full game, and I think City was just honestly, like you said, we're recording this on Wednesday, and we also saw them in the Champions League this week, where they feel they're reserved. But even watching that game, I felt, I had obviously a Haaland in my fantasy team, but they created nothing. The goals came in a span of like what 8, 10 minutes, and their goal came from Diaz. Like you said, we were watching the game. It's just I felt City deserved to lose, whether that goal was offside or not. You know what I mean? I'm not
Yeah.
saying that I'm an advocate for an offside goal, but they just offered nothing. And I mean, we talked about it a few weeks back when they beat Liverpool 3-0, right? Because we were speaking about Liverpool. I mean, we were saying how City still looked like a team that is, unconvincing at times. And I mean, they showed that this weekend and in the Champions League as well, obviously yesterday. But yeah, I mean, they've just been, since the start of the season, kind of up and down all over the place. And for the first time in my lifetime, I'm a big fan of the Pep Guardiola. Since the first day I've seen him, even being a Chelsea fan, I think he just maybe needs a break. Not even a break, just time away from soccer, whatever the case might be. Because it seems even the City team, it's just the identity doesn't seem as Guardiola as you'd want it to, not want it to be, but as it would be in the past. But maybe that's just me.
No, and I think that you're actually spot on with that. I mean, I share that thought with you. Like, I look at some of their signings and they don't seem like Pep players to me. Like obviously I think we go back to I don't know if you remember their like Amazon Prime documentary where I think Pep when there was a scene where Pep goes in January and asks for a center back and he's like, we need this position specifically, and he's very specific about what he's looking for, and I look at some of those signings and I'm not going to say that they're not going to hit because I might make me eat my words and they come out and they turn around, but they don't seem like Pep like players, right? And whether that's because City was their intentions were to prepare for life after Pep, because I think this might be either his last year or he has one more year after this left on his contract, and I think that there's been rumors that he's definitely not going to extend. So I don't know if that's, kind of preparing for life after him or whatever it is, but I agree with you. I think Newcastle fully deserve to win. I mean, they created better chances than City. There's one chance that I think City created that should have been a goal, and it was Phil Foden. Was kind of inside the box, and he just kind of put it wide. It was like a wide open shot, maybe like 8, 9 yards out. But I mean, Newcastle, same thing. Newcastle had, I don't know if you remember, they ball was, I think this was in the first half actually, before that City chance. A ball was crossed across the box, and I mean the player missed a tap in back post.
Yeah.
But you know, like I said, I think that Newcastle 100% deserved to win this game, and City kind of had a couple of a few good weeks, I'd say, and then obviously came back from international break and delivered this performance, and then like you mentioned, the midweek too. So it's interesting to see what happens. I mean, I think from an Arsenal perspective, you never really write them off just because of our history, not last year with them, but the 2 years prior, right? But definitely do not look up to par in terms of, those teams that, we've kind of battled with in the last 3 years or so. So interesting to see. Interesting to see what happens with them. I don't know. I'm just so shocked at that goal. I mean, unless I missed something on the replays or something, but that header, the ball was kind of headed on to, I think it was Bruno Guimaraes back post, right? But he looked 100% offside to me, and then he headed it back across, and Harvey Barnes tapped it in. Other than that, I mean, I think Newcastle fully deserved to win the game.
Yeah, I was able to catch up on the highlights of that game, and I saw the clips that you were talking about, and I remember watching that in yeah, now that you talked about it and seeing the clips, I remember watching it live, and I was like, yeah, this is gonna be given outside. and just was like so shocked that it wasn't given. At the same time, like you said, Newcastle absolutely deserved to win. But I think I don't know, it brings a question. There was a couple questionable calls as well I saw in the Chelsea game yesterday, but that was in the Champions League, so I guess that's a different thing to take up. But it's interesting as well. You brought up the City perspective for the Arsenal point of view, especially in the title race, because we've seen, I mean, we'll touch on it, but we've seen, I mean, we have touched on it, but we've seen what Liverpool and City results have done in match week 12. So, it's interesting, the gap that Arsenal is creating, especially at the top of the league, because we expected at least, if not both of those teams, at least one of those teams to be, putting some pressure on Arsenal. And at the moment, it seems to be in second place, us Chelsea. So it will be interesting, like you said. We don't agree that this is a Pep team. It doesn't look like a Pep team. It doesn't look like a team that's going to give, or not even give, but one of those teams that necessarily go on that 14 match winning streak like City's team typically do, or stuff like that. And we've seen Liverpool struggling again this week in the Premier League, and also we just watched them earlier today in the Champions League. So I think it will be interesting as the season goes. Yeah, and it would be an interesting watch because obviously with these two teams being so lukewarm at the moment.
Yeah. And I just thought of a question that I wanted to ask you as well. And I don't think that, obviously it's one thing with City as well, like we kind of talk about with Liverpool. But do you think not having a player like De Bruyne and not having that type of sort of player that's just able to unlock defenses, so easily, do you think that City's kind of struggling in that aspect too? Because I mean, you and I both kind of grew up in watching him, and I think that for me, in my perspective, I've always rated him very highly, but I think it almost kind of looks like, they're missing that sort of star player that it's just like, give him the ball and he's going to create, and obviously Holland has like what, 13, 14 goals this season. So he's kind of like their go-to, but I think when you have a player that's just able to find runs and these amazing balls and crosses. Do you think that they're hurting in that aspect as well? Like, do you think that I don't think we can question necessarily Phil Foden's abilities, but do you think he has that same sort of like vision to where he can bring the best out of a forward that he's playing with? Because I feel like he doesn't necessarily have the same vision as De Bruyne. I think he's more like an individual brilliant player. But do you think that that kind of has anything to do with it as well?
Hey, listen. Okay, Phil Foden, Kevin De Bruyne. I'm gonna end the sentence right there. I never want to hear a sentence with those two again. Ever. If mate, any team would miss Kevin De Bruyne, and I think obviously it's a easy answer to give any team. I'm not gonna just demolish City and say they're missing that. But I think any team, Arsenal, the top team, as good as Arsenal is right now, Chelsea, wherever you want to pick in the world, Kevin De Bruyne at his peak would start for any of those teams. So, as you said, we grew up watching him. We know how good he was. So any team that misses that caliber of player would, automatically, as we've seen this season, the goals and all those other stuffs are going to dry up. So I don't think that's a very difficult question. The only thing is, what I do think is like what we said earlier. I don't know if these players are Pep like players or if they're into that or even in that sense. If he'd find another Kevin De Bruyne, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think even if they did have Kevin De Bruyne at the moment, they would still struggle because they're still missing pieces of that jigsaw, or at least the jigsaw that we know Pep for. I don't know, obviously with time and stuff, people change. But for the Pep that we know, I think he would still be missing, pieces of that jigsaw to make that team like in terms of to be like what we expected them to be. Would they miss? Are they missing Kevin De Bruyne? 100%. Was if he was there, would they be better? 100%, and possibly be higher in the table. 100%. I don't doubt that, but I think they would still have problems because they're still talking about the defense. Especially now the goalkeeper. We saw they rotated in midweek. I saw a couple players. We thought Ake and those players were at least solid enough to come in, and we saw the performance that they put in. So, yeah, I think it's just, like we said, maybe just need a revamp, a refresh, and possibly refreshing of coach as well. So we'll see the decision they make at the end of the season because I don't
Yeah.
believe that they're going to. They never will fire him. Obviously, I don't believe that they'll do anything in mid-season, and they don't. They shouldn't. He's done way too many for that club for them to ever disrespect him in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. Well, that takes us to Sunday's two games, and obviously we'll start with the first one, Leeds hosting Villa, and Villa picking up 3 points with a 2-1 victory. And I think this was I think you actually had given this to Leeds 2-1. I gave a 3-0 to Villa somehow. But Morgan Rogers with a couple of goals, and his influence has been pretty crazy when you think about this Villa team, and obviously the England national team as well. But Leeds got the early goal in this one, and they led until the second half. So it wasn't necessarily an easy game for Villa.
Yeah, no, I think this was a good game. Like I said, I gave it the 2-1 to Leeds. I went played a bit soccer in the morning, came back, and I was watching this game, and Leeds was up. I felt it was going to be could be a game where it could go anyway. But like you said, in the second half, a top performance from Rodgers, especially in that first goal, and what a free kick. But I mean, I'm a little bit skeptical of the free kick with the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, like you said, I think, a game that could have won anyway, so not surprising on their end. Leeds has been doing well, so they also performed well on the day. So I don't think it was, a bad result, like we said, or like we'd say for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Villa is definitely a team that had a slow start this season, and they picked it up recently. I mean, they're sitting in fourth place, 21 points, a point behind Cities. Definitely a team to kind of watch out for and see sort of how their next few games go, and sort of if they can maintain that position and get back into the Champions League, obviously in the Europa League this year. So we'll see kind of how they fare. But that takes us to North London and the North London derby, and what a game, mate.
But what a game this was. Yeah, what a game this was for Arsenal. What a game this was for Tottenham. I mean, we played them a few weeks back. Didn't think they could be any worse, but they managed to somehow top their worst performance that I've seen watching them. So yeah, but I think yeah, just also, credit where credit's deserved for Arsenal. They've been relentless this season, so you have to give them credit. But I think from one point of view, Arsenal has been great. So we've talked about that a lot on the pod, but it's just I don't know from your point of view, you're obviously an Arsenal fan, but mate, I watched that game and I felt secondhand embarrassment as a Chelsea fan for Spurs. And I know that's kind of crazy saying that as a Chelsea fan, but there was nothing that they offered. Obviously, a spectacular goal. They would say from Richarlison, I would say more of a mistake. And, obviously he's a quality player. These are good players, but just didn't see enough from Spurs until they realized the game was gone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was complete and utter just control and domination from Arsenal. Obviously, Eze with the hat trick, and funny enough, I actually took him out of my fantasy team this past week, and he goes and scores a hat trick as soon as I take him out. So won't be bringing him back anytime soon. But brilliant, brilliant performance. I mean, had a couple of chances. I think you
Could
mentioned
have
earlier in
scored
the
four
pod.
goals too.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think you mentioned earlier in the pod, the Rice chance, and I think Timber had one off a corner where, he just, I think if you would have given that to him again 10 times, he scores. So it was just a brilliant, brilliant performance. I mean, I love the energy that Arsenal came out with. And I'll tell you what, I wasn't necessarily worried, but, I was like, North London Derby after the international break, not really sure what to expect, especially, given Spurs away form, which coming into this match week, I think was the best in the league, or tied with Arsenal for the best in the league. So, kind of looking at those things, I was, expecting sort of a gritty game, especially knowing how these North London derbies go. But I think Arsenal just dominated. I will say though, I think it was as a second goal. I thought that should have been given as an offside, kind of looking at what we've seen, especially in the Liverpool game with the Van Dijk header and the player sort of in front of the goalkeeper. If I remember correctly, I think that should have been called offside, but, I don't think that it honestly would have changed anything, to be honest.
I can't remember like the action that you're talking about. I watched the full game, but I can't remember the offside. I don't know because maybe it wasn't that clear to me on the day. But like you said, I mean, I watched the game. I thought it was just like an embarrassment. I didn't think Tottenham offered anything. And, nowadays, playing soccer a bit, I talked to my friends a bit about it, and I tell them I think I understand the fact of going and trying to make the game very difficult for a team to score, but I think the analogy I use is a boxer going into the ring and literally just having his guard up. That guy jabs all day, and initially he's going to get you, and you're going to get knocked out. I think if you don't offer a couple of jabs back to make him a little bit scared of what you can do, you know what I mean? And I think that's what I saw from Spurs in that game. That was just my summer. Like watching the game. I know Arsenal was, amazing, but nothing until, they realized, like I said, the game was gone. That was credit to Arsenal. I think they've kind of nullified everyone that they've played this season. So, we've seen it today in the Champions League against Bayern Munich, a top team. So I don't think it's something that we can take lightly. But just on the day, I felt just Spurs didn't offer anything. So it wasn't even anything you could really test. It's more like a training match for Arsenal on the day.
Yeah, absolutely. That love the analogy too. I think that's a great analogy to have. It's I think, having that defense in this game, we've seen a lot of times where teams, essentially park the bus and, you can call whatever you want, but put 11 players back there and make it very difficult. But I think eventually playing that way, you're gonna concede. I mean, you can have the best defense in the world and you're gonna concede. So I think you have to offer something. You have to kind of push teams back and not let them come at you. Obviously, the way Arsenal went at Spurs. So obviously, I was very happy. Funny enough, you might not even believe this, but I actually didn't watch this game in its entirety. I was actually out at the mall, so I was kind of trying to watch it on my phone throughout the mall. But obviously, very very happy with the result, and kind of sets us up for an interesting and should be in a very exciting game at the weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think, like we said off air, this game this weekend would be. I mean, we've always known it was going to be obviously this weekend, but I think a couple weeks back it would be a different feeling going into this game. But now it should be a good game. Let's see how it goes. Like you said, Arsenal's been topped and beaten everyone this season with the Premier League, top of the Champions League. So it will be a good test for us, and let's see how it goes.
Absolutely. Well, that moves us into the Monday night game, and I actually was able to watch this game, and a 1-0 loss for United at home to a 10-man Everton team who came to fight literally and figuratively on the day at Old Trafford. I mean, I don't know that I've seen a red card like that, not just in the Prem, but in my time watching this game. I don't know about you, but it was kind of a shock watching it live, and we watching it live, you actually didn't realize what happened until a couple minutes later when they showed the close-up replay. I initially thought it was maybe something he said to the ref, just because you didn't really get to see it. But I don't know, man. I think it was a crazy, crazy red card. But I think we both said this off air. I think it helped Everton in a way, just because it kind of gave them an excuse to play that gritty game that we've been talking about. But very good game. Very, very good game from a neutral perspective. United, I will say, I thought that they were very, very poor. I mean, your man Drewsbury Hall got a goal, and it was a good goal. A little bit after the
Banger.
red card. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because after this game, I obviously watched the whole game, and I was very disappointed to mention it. I mean, they had, obviously Xerxes had a couple of headers off crosses, which I thought he should have done better on. Pickford had a couple of good saves. There was one chance that I thought that, Bruno should have scored 100%. The ball was actually cut back by Mason Mount, and he just he went with the outside of his right foot instead of just, slamming it with his left foot. But I was very disappointed in United and how they played, given that Everton had 10 men. And after the game, I went back and I was like, let me just look at the statistics and see kind of what the statistics say. And if you didn't watch this game and you look at the statistics, 70% possession for United, 1.71 expected goals to Everton's 0.21, 25 total shots for United to Everton's 3, 6 on target for United to Everton's 1. If you were just look at those numbers, you would say that Everton were boxed in and United just couldn't find a way to score. But watching it live did not feel that way at all. I mean, it was such a it was such a like a frustrating game, I feel, for United and United fans, just because, there was no consistency in the way that, they tried to create chances. Like 25 shots, but like I said, there was one that I can say should have been a goal. The rest of them were just kind of just shots, right? So very, very disappointing game in terms of from a United point of view, especially because they had some good results there. I don't know. There were a few games unbeaten and whatnot. So it looked like it was starting to turn around for United. And then this game comes around and it's like you see some of those same old problems. I mean, you're facing 10 men with 5 defenders on the pitch, something that I don't necessarily understand, but hey, maybe not for me to understand.
Yeah, I think I agree. I see what you're saying. Like watching this game, I was able to catch bits and pieces, but not all of it, to be honest with you. Honestly, I think from my perspective, watching this game, it just kind of put everything that we did so wrong against them a few weeks back into perspective, especially losing that game with 10 men against them. Everything showed displayed that, there is still ways to get about it. And even you said it, like, even though they got that red card, which was a silly red card to be fighting your own teammates, but a red card nevertheless, in what, the first 12 minutes or so of the game, even David Moyes, like you said, explained and that kind of gave them the fight. And it showed, something that we can all sit here every day and talk about what tactics you'd play when you get a team and how you'd want to play and all that. But without a proper mindset. I mean, we've seen that. You've seen that a lot, especially with your Arsenal team this season. Some of these players in these teams are nothing. So I think, Everton came, but went to United at Old Trafford and displayed what United haven't had in a few years. It's easy to go for us, not just United. I'm not going to just throw United under the bus, but for any of our top teams to go sign a player and pay them big wages and have them play for our club, but the passion that it takes to represent a club sometimes and to get embedded into that club, it's a different thing. And I think they're just struggling a bit, not just with the tactic side, but we speak a lot off air about some of the players that they have, and it was just exposed again. Not something that we are surprised about. We kind of wanted from the neutral point of view, you'd want to see them kind of go on a run again because, it's Manchester United, the biggest club in the world. So you'd kind of want to see that for them. But it's not something that will just change overnight, I don't think. So you and I both know. And I think that will happen periodically as the season go. Obviously, they're growing and getting better. But I think there will be slumps, and it was just one of those. I think for us as Chelsea fans, it was just a bit disappointing seeing how Everton, not disappointed, but I was happy for Everton, obviously, but a bit disappointed knowing that we threw that game a few weeks back, especially getting that early red card.
Absolutely. And one thing I noticed too watching this game, I mean, second half, obviously losing 1-0 to 10 men, and I was just looking at the bench for United to kind of see what they had to bring on players, and I think depth is an issue for them as well. I mean, I know that they had Cunha and Seshko out injured,
Oh, it's a
but
massive, massive, massive injury issue for them.
yeah, you look at their bench and they had one player that you can say is somewhat of an attacking option for them, and it was Mason Mount. I mean, I think they had another attacker on the bench, but I think it was like a 17-year-old kid. Everybody else was a defender and Kobe Minu. I was looking at that and I was like, how can he change this even if he wanted to? You know what I mean? So I think it's definitely one for United fans to forget. I personally thought it was, from what I watched United this season, I thought it was the worst performance of the season by far. Not just because they were playing 10 men and lost to 10 men, but just in terms of the gameplay and sort of how they were playing. I mean, just I think silly stuff, allowing Everton to kind of break out of their pressure and Everton could have had another goal. I mean, they had some breaks where, they could have found themselves getting a second goal on the night. Overall, I think just poor game from United, but brilliant 3 points for Everton, away to United, 10 men, 3 points at Old Trafford. David Moyes returning to Old Trafford, getting points there, and then the cherry on top is obviously level on points with Liverpool, but goal difference puts them in front of Liverpool. So Everton fans are just probably loving this week.
Yeah, they definitely loving this week. And also, just like you said, a well-deserved performance from them and deserve to be where they are in the table. And they've been playing, also been really good since it's not really good, but have a solid start to the season. So I think something for them to be happy about. And the longer they stay above Liverpool, the longer those fans will be happy. So
Yeah, absolutely. And given Liverpool's form, it might be for a little while longer.
it's looking like it might be for a little while longer. So you never know, but you'll see. We'll see as the season goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that kind of concludes match week 12, and obviously, um, thank God the Prem is back and no international breaks till what is it, February or March or whatever it is. So I'm sure we're both happy about that. I just looking at the table.
You have any
It's looking
players going to AFCON?
at Arsenal. No.
Damn it.
What about Chelsea?
No, mate, we good, but for you guys, damn it.
I don't
Yeah.
think. I think that might be a prerequisite for Arteta to sign you. To be honest.
We had Nicholas Jackson, and then he's at Bayern now, so we don't have any.
Well, I think that's good then. I think that should make it interesting. Interesting to see kind of. It's good you bring that up actually because a lot of teams are going to be losing some players throughout the leagues. Might make it a little bit better in terms of the rest of us kind of getting to play those teams and whatnot. Interesting kind of time in the Premier League. All right, well, let's move into predictions for match week 13. Getting closer to the halfway point of the season. Still, a few game weeks to go. So, a lot of shuffling in the table to come. But we'll start with the Saturday. No early kickoff this time. So you get to sleep in or enjoy your morning until 10 a.m. But Brentford, Burnley starting us off. What are you thinking on this one?
Yes, sir. I'm going for a Brentford win. I'm gonna go a 2-1 Brentford.
Okay. I like that. I like that. But for the sake of not copying you, I don't want to go 3-1 because I think that's a lot, and I don't want to go 1-0. You know what? I'll go for a 3-1. Let's do 3-1. See what happens. City Leeds. City rested their entire squad, it seemed like midweek for Leeds this weekend.
Big clash.
Big game for them.
Biggest
I'll,
game of
I'll
the
be
weekend this weekend, mate.
I'll be honest with you. I'm triple captaining Holland, so I'm gonna go 5-0 City.
I like that score. I was gonna go 3. Now I'm gonna go 4. Match it similar. I think they have to. They cannot lose this game. Oh, there's no way at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Poor Leeds. Um, next up, Sunderland Bournemouth. Difficult game to call. What are you feeling on this one?
Yeah, this one is a difficult one. I'm stuck between a draw or I'm gonna go to 1 Sunderland, having it being at home to Sunderland.
All
So I'm
right,
gonna go 2-2.
2-2. I like that. I think that's a fair result. Uh, I'm gonna go 2-1 Bournemouth. Um, I think Bournemouth will get back to winning ways after their draw to West Ham this past week. Another kind of interesting game, Everton Newcastle.
Yeah, this will be a good game. Two teams that are kind of, trying to find their feet pretty much still, as we said. For Newcastle, probably a little bit more worried than Everton because they've had a better start from their expectations. But I'm gonna go with this being away. I'm gonna go 2-0, honestly, Newcastle.
Okay, I was gonna give it to Newcastle too. I'm gonna go 2-1. Next up, a all London affair, Spurs hosting Fulham, and I honestly have no idea what direction to take this in.
Yeah. This one could go anywhere, but they have to win. They must win. They've lost so many games back to back. So I'll go 3-1 Spurs.
They did get 3 goals midweek away to PSG, so I think that's fair. I'm gonna go 2-0 Spurs with no conviction in that one from my end at least. Next up, a mid, well, not even mid table because I think Crystal Palace is pretty high up, but Palace hosting United Sunday morning. What are we feeling on this one?
This will be a good game. This is at Palace. I think Palace will take advantage of that two-man midfield. So I'm gonna go. I'll say 2-1 Palace.
Okay.
Here's a
Uh,
9:05 kickoff or a couple 9:05 kickoffs.
yeah, yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know what United's injuries are looking like in terms of if they get Seshko and Cunha back, but if they don't, I think they're in trouble. I'm gonna go 2-2 just because I feel like Cunha might be back in time for this. I don't know about Seshko, but I think that maybe helps them a little bit, but I could very well see it be 2-1, like you said. Next up, the 905s, Villa Wolves. What are we feeling?
3-0 Villa.
I don't know why I even asked that. I'm gonna go one further. I'm gonna go 4-0 Villa. Forest Brighton. Difficult game to call. I'll give you this one first, since I got yours first a couple of times. I'm gonna go 2-1. I want to say Brighton.
I'm going for 1-1.
I like that. West Ham, Liverpool. Can Liverpool get some points on the board? What are you thinking?
Interesting game for both teams. It being away at West Ham, I'm gonna go 3-1 Liverpool.
Okay, I like that. I'm actually gonna copy you on that one. I like that result. Big one. I have a feeling you and I might go separate ways now after agreeing on Liverpool West Ham game. What are you thinking?
Yeah. I even thought about this game. I'm gonna go. It's crazy. I want to say 1-1. Not because but because I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna go 1-1. I think the set pieces are gonna be crazy. It's gonna be like this. Trying to defend them will be interesting, especially with our defenders. But I think we also have the ability to set up well and be proper. It's like a difficult team to defend. I just could see us being a difficult team to defend and getting undone on some of those because, like you said, we're recording this Wednesday night, and I was able to watch the Bayern Munich game. So we'll see. I'm gonna go 1-1. My heart's saying 2-1 for us, but I'm gonna go 1.
Okay. Um, I think that's a fair assumption. I I don't know, man. It's tough to call. I think given both teams' form, Arsenal haven't kept a clean sheet in their last 3 matches after that insane start. So obviously Gabriel is not in this one. Hopefully we can get, Gyökeres is back. I think Havertz is close to. I want to say I'm gonna go with my heart on this one. I'm gonna go 2-0 for us.
Well, let's see. It's gonna be a good game. I can't
Um,
say what it could be, but because I could see both sides and I just want to see a good game. So, like we
yeah,
said, if this was a couple weeks back, the momentum and everything in this would be a bit different. But
yeah, absolutely, 100%. I
teams,
100% agree with you.
both teams are
Um,
going in this fully confident. So we'll see.
We'll see. It's gonna be a good one. Would have been nice to be able to watch this one together. Obviously, me being down in Florida this week. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm sure. I'm sure. I predict 2-0, but I don't think it'll be. I think when you look at a 2-0 score line, I think you kind of think you coast through the game in a way. I don't think that we'll coast at all. I think that Chelsea will make it difficult for us. And I'll be honest with you, I really am afraid of that Esteval kid. I mean, I think he's spectacular. I think he's definitely. I think you guys got a great player there.
Yeah, I think, like you said, there's a couple things. Obviously, I think for us from a Chelsea point of view, I think Arsenal is ahead of us on obviously the benchmark in Europe at the moment in terms of how good they are this season. And like we said, everything, just how they look so serious and how gone about the job this season in terms of that. But also, I think they've been together for a while, so you kind of expect that. Not expect it, but you kind of respect, what they're doing. I think the only difference and the only confidence or some of the confidence I get from our side is we have, I would say, thinking about this earlier, talking to my couple of my friends offline, and I would say is, Arteta's first job has been Arsenal. So the 7 years kind of makes sense if you understand what I mean, for him
Hmm.
kind of figuring everything out and you know, players and how to manage players, tactics, all the things that we talk about. I think the 7 year kind of makes sense. The one positive or confidence I get from my side is Enzo on his other side because, both of them are very heavily influenced by Pep. But Enzo was also in the setup at West Ham earlier, I think from like 2018 to like 2021. And then he went to City as their under 21 manager. And then he kind of went from City Pep's assistant manager for a couple of years and he went to Leicester. So I think the path in terms of learning, time for trial and error, he's kind of had that. While as we can see from Mikel, he's had that at Arsenal. So that's the one thing, as we've seen in a couple of these games so far, Enzo's brilliant when he gets his team right. So I think, like you said, it could be an easy game, but we can all not easy game, sorry. It's gonna be a good game. but we can also see and understand things will be maybe a little bit different. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes in the game. I think it will be interesting the way whatever the result might be. I think we will learn a lot as Chelsea fans on that day.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to watch it, excited to see the outcome of it, and hopefully it's an entertaining one. And we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And that kind of concludes this match week's pod. Thank God the Prem is back for a while.
Just
Brilliant kind
as
of
you heard my boy chant, bro.
who?
You heard his chant?
Who's?
Esteval, I like it.
I told you, man. I think that guy is a player, man. I think that
Yeah,
he
he's
is absolutely phenomenal.
going to be a player. We just have to keep him. You know how it is. I'm excited for him, but at the same time, just like our team, we kind of have to, not necessarily keep them grounded. I wouldn't want to say keep them grounded, kind of keep working and let's see how it goes. It's a long season ahead. We don't want to hit a couple now and then a couple 30 games later and but yeah, I think he's a top player, bro. He's one of the first player, me after Hazard. It was Reece James. That was my favorite player at Chelsea. Then probably we have a couple more now that I could pick from, but yeah, he's definitely going to be one of those players that is like a maverick to our team.
100% I agree. 100% I agree. And you know what? It's like obviously for the league is very good, but I almost wish that he would have went to like Real instead, if I'm being honest with you.
Well, 100%. And that's the thing is, my friends and I, we were talking about it. I mean, you know me. I think, along with, like we said, Hazard and Reece James were the last two players that I really had on the pedestal, and we know how those players are for Chelsea. But I think in the past couple of years, we've been very critical of Clearly. But I mean, we're talking about this kid, right? And my friends and I, we were even talking about the same way you're talking about it. But I even said to them, bro, this whole conversation we have not mentioned, and I'll say the same thing to you. We haven't even mentioned Cole Palmer. And it's crazy,
Yeah.
to think about the abundance of riches that we could have. So yeah, we just have to, like we said, keep grounded and hopefully that, things can work out. And yeah, but I think we talked about it off here. I think the Prem is the place to be now. So Estevals and the new Estevals, I think we will see a lot more in the Premier League.
Absolutely, 100%, and I hope it continues, right? Makes the league more entertaining, makes it more exciting. I think obviously you and I both would love to see our team sort of, win and not stop winning. But I think when you look at the product of the game, you want to see good product as well. And to have good product, you need to have challenges around you, and you want to see your team kind of be able to overcome those challenges, right? So I think that no one wants to see a league where the same team's winning it 8 years in a row, right? Which is kind of what the Prem was in the last few years. I mean, City had how many titles, and there was one Liverpool title in the mix of all that. So we want to see more competition. We want to see better teams, and I think we're both here for it.
Yeah, it will be good. It's exciting for the talents that's coming through. So yeah, on to match week 13. Inshallah, we have some good results and we go from there.
Absolutely, man. All right. Well, thank you for listening, and I will see you. I'll definitely be talking to you throughout the match week, but I will see you on the pod next week.
Yes, sir.